My name is Andy, and today we are back with the race review from today's French Grand Prix, the recent round of the 2018 Formula One World Championship. It's the first time that F1 has returned to France for a Grand Prix in 10 years, and this country is of course the birthplace of F1, going back to the first Grand Prix that was ever held back in 1903, so there's certainly a good amount of significance in the return to France for a Grand Prix. Before we get into the weekend review and the race itself, thank you very much for watching. If you do enjoy this video, do hit the like button, hit the subscribe button as well so you don't miss out on any content from myself moving forward, and do also hit the bell icon too so that you don't miss any videos or even other race reviews moving forward. Now, to start with, as always, the build-up to the Grand Prix. There was a couple of main stories in the build-up. The main one, of course, being the announcement by Red Bull that they are going to be linking up with Honda from 2019 and for 2020 as well. 2-year deal with the Japanese manufacturer. Now, this is something I've seen coming for a while, to be honest. It's been pretty much the only option for Red Bull to change manufacturers for engines from Renault. Honda was the only scenario, and obviously they put it into Toro Rosso. That gave them a good insight as to how the manufacturer worked. They've obviously decided it's going to be worthwhile moving forward for the parent team as well, and they will technically become a de facto works team in a sense, Red Bull. So it'll be interesting to see how that works. Only a 2-year deal as well, so it still gives Red Bull options for 2021 when new engine regulations are due to be announced. So that will be interesting to see. Obviously, will this keep Daniel Ricciardo at the team, who's obviously out of contract at the end of the year? Been a lot of talk, rumour and hearsay over the week as well, whether he'll stay with Red Bull, will he move elsewhere? It's McLaren have been muted to have tried to make an approach for the Australian, but nothing concrete at the moment. Other news in the build-up to the week surrounds McLaren themselves. Obviously, Fernando Alonso just came back from winning Le Mans 24-hour with Toyota last weekend, and his future's up in the air as well, whether he'll stay with McLaren in F1, will he go off to Indy cars and possibly do that and try and win the third and final leg of the Triple Crown with the Indy 500. But one of the more obscure stories, so to say, came from rumours of unrest at McLaren HQ. They feel the word coming out is that some of the mechanics and team personnel don't get on with some of the top brass management, feel that they're just yes men in a way, and the reward for getting an update ready for the Spanish Grand Prix in Barcelona were Freddo bars, which are are tiny small chocolate bars. If you don't know, if you're not in the UK and don't have access to them anywhere, I don't know, but yeah, that was a reward for getting the upgrades ready for Barcelona. It was a Freddo bar each. Supposedly management were embarrassed handing them out as well, so that's caused a few interesting moments through the weekend, and it didn't get much better for McLaren as the weekend wore on. But we move now on to the on-track action, quickly starting off with practice. Free practice 1 and 2 on Friday was dry. Hamilton topped both those sessions. Bottas, Ericsson and Brendan Hartley lost out on some running during FP2 due to issues, Ericsson being the main one, as at the end of FP1 he crashed to Sauber, hit the barrier and actually burst into flames as well. So that put him on the back foot as well for the rest of the weekend. That was not helped either when FP3 became a washout due to a deluge in the south of France as well. So that was a bit of a washout session. But qualifying itself was a dry session, albeit with the possibility of rain coming over the mountains. And Q1, coming back to McLaren, it was a disaster for McLaren. Both of them out in Q1, both Fernando Alonso and Stoffel Vandoorne not making it through to the second session in qualifying, joined in being eliminated with Brendan Hartley, who started at the back due to an engine issue, and the two Williams of Lance Stroll and Sergei Sorokin, whose issues with that car we don't need to mention again because we all know how well that's been going which is not at all. It was the first time that both Saubas had made Q2 since the Italian Grand Prix in 2015 as well. Ericsson also getting through, as well as Charles Leclerc keeping up that performance of doing, I think it's 4 races in a row he's made Q2 now. He's just been doing absolutely phenomenal. And he then bettered that by making it into Q3 this time as well, with a fantastic effort from the Monegalese driver. He actually ended up being P8 by the end of qualifying. Hamilton, though, was to take pole position for the French Grand Prix. It was his 75th pole position in his career, and it was set up actually by a stunning lap in Q2 on the red super soft tyres rather than the faster ultra softs, which you can see on the picture on the screen. And that set him up, and he was just absolutely stunning. He ended up being a Mercedes front row. Bottas was second, Vettel only in third. He looked to be struggling at some points during the session. Verstappen and Red Bull teammate Ricciardo were fourth and fifth. Raikkonen was sixth. Now Romain Grosjean in the Haas brought out a red flag in Q3 after crashing. He didn't set a time, started 10th. His teammate Magnussen would be 9th, and both Reynolds would be 7th and 8th, Hulkenberg and Sainz. And it was a shame for Grosjean because he had actually done quite well during Q1 and Q2. He was only 6 tenths off the fastest time in Q1, and he was within about a second in Q2 as well. So he looked quick on those qualifying laps, but just absolutely made a mess of it in Q3 when it mattered. He could easily have been the best of the rest if he had got that together. Now it then comes on to the race itself today. There was rumour of a possibility of rain towards the end of the race again, but it was not to materialise despite a lot of toing and froing over the radio during the race. And the mayhem begun straight away into turn 1 as Sebastian Vettel got a great start on those ultra soft tyres against the 2 Mercedes on the super soft, so he got the extra bite. But with Hamilton taking the defensive line down towards turn 1 and Bottas alongside him, Vettel had nowhere to go. Took back into line, Bottas went round the outside of him, but before they finished turn 1, Vettel locked up straight into the back of that Mercedes, flat tyre on the left rear for the Finnish driver and front wing damage for that Ferrari. And then pandemonium went on around as people went across the runoff area, got back onto the track, and then into turn 2, 3, 4 Pierre Gasly got mixed up with Esteban Ocon, and both of them, 2 French drivers on their home debut in F1, both out before they'd even completed the first lap. And those incidents brought out the safety car straight away as there was an awful lot of debris all strewn across the first sector. Vettel and Bottas would both make it back to the pits so that they weren't out of the race. Vettel only having front wing damage, and Bottas obviously making it back without damaging anything other on his car. Both of them went to the yellow soft tyres to run as long into the race as possible, and obviously with it being a full safety car they were able to catch up to the pack pretty quickly. The race restarted on lap 6, and the running order at that point was Hamilton from Verstappen in second, Carlos Sainz was up to third, with Ricciardo fourth, Magnussen fifth, and Leclerc up to sixth in that Sauber, but he did drop back a bit quickly towards the tail end of the top 10 after the restart. Now, for that first corner incident, Sebastian Vettel did receive eventually a 5-second time penalty for causing a collision with Bottas, but he wasn't to be hindered by that until much later in the race when he made another pit stop as the tyres wore off. And by lap 12, Seb was up into the points. He was P10, so within 6 laps of the restart, that Ferrari had gone from being the 17th to 10th. He was on fire, was the German. Bottas couldn't stay with him, even though he'd done the same thing and supposedly in a quicker car if you go off a qualifying pace. He couldn't stick with him. He was actually a couple of places back at points as well, so wasn't the greatest points for Bottas, but Vettel was flying through the field, and it wasn't long until he was up into the top 5 and 6 as well. The race did sort of lull out for a wee bit. There was obviously action on track. There was a lot of passes, many off it under the DRS zone, down the Mistral Straight into one of the chicanes. that comes about on this track, and obviously the drivers had complained about that during the weekend, finding it hard to get the braking points. Some of the junior formulas had came up with their own ways of going around it. But that was where most of it happened. There was a couple of good passes at the end of the second part of the Mistral straight onto the fast right-hand swoop. Bottas done one, Vettel done a couple as well. Ricciardo would do one later in the race, which I'll mention shortly. But away from the general to and fro, and there wasn't anything major happening on track at that point. It did lull down a little bit. Verstappen was the first to stop from the top runners. He rejoined ahead of Vettel, which was important for his race. Well, Ricciardo stopped a couple of laps later, but he came out behind Sebastian Vettel, but within a matter of about 12 or 14 laps he had managed to catch up, regain the 6-second loss that he had made, or whatever it was in time, and pass the German with a really nice move. Between those pit stops for Red Bull, Perez then became the next retirement, the third retirement of the day, putting both Force Indias out. Suspected engine problems in that Mercedes, and considering that's a Spec 2 engine, as it was confirmed by Mercedes himself after practice 2 on Friday, that's not what they're going to be wanting. It was a poor French Grand Prix weekend for the Pink Panthers and the Silverstone based team. Further on into the race, Hamilton would pit in lap 34. He rejoined second behind Kimi Raikkonen, but Kimi hadn't pitted by this point, and he was still running on those ultra softs he started. It was a heck of a stint from the Finn. He would pit the next lap, and Hamilton would retake the lead, and Kimi would come out in fifth of it. Yes, he came out in fifth place. So it was, after all the pit stops were done, it was Hamilton from Verstappen, Ricciardo, Vettel, and Raikkonen, with Bottas a bit further back in 6th place. Moving in further on, obviously there's another lot of stuff going on in the race with just the passes with the DRS zone again, so again it wasn't hugely, massively important. Leclerc had fallen back and then made his way back up through the field again, so another couple of drivers did as well, including Nico Hülkenberg, who started on the soft tyres as well. And it just started, again, it started to lay low a little bit for me. There was bits going on. I was tweeting as much as I could online, but there wasn't a lot going on, and a lot of teams were looking towards the clouds hoping for some rain, and it never materialised, although I do remember one bit, which was Fernando Alonso not being very happy at all in that McLaren. No tyres, no brakes, no points was pretty much what he said. And considering that he was supposedly told after all the pit stops he should be in a top 10 position, and at that point he ended up in 13th and going backwards, he's probably wishing he stayed in that Toyota last week, and probably be wishing for the Silverstone 6 hours at the end of July to hurry up and come along in a hurry. Now, Raikkonen was able to get past Ricciardo in lap 47 down the Mistral straight. He'd obviously caught up to Vettel and got past him. Vettel would end up pitting. Bottas pitted as well, but he had an issue. His left rear dropped him further down the order. That left Vettel easily in 5th place, where he would stay till the end of the race. And then a couple of laps before the end, Lance Stroll in the Williams, he had pitted on lap 1 as well. He'd been on the soft tyres the whole race, and he'd locked up earlier on his front left, and the thing blew, coming at the end of the Mistral straight, second part of it, into the fast right-hander. And a lot of debris took out one of the brake markings advertisements, and we ended up with a virtual safety car with 2 laps to go, and it looked like the race might even finish under virtual safety car, but they did actually get it back up and running before the race finished, albeit covering that corner under double waved yellows. This helped Carlos Sainz, who was complaining of a loss of power. He lost 6th place and 7th place to Kevin Magnussen and Valtteri Bottas, but the virtual safety car meant he was safe from his teammate Hülkenberg, who came home in 9th. So it was the 8th and 9th for the Renaults on their home soil, and 10th place went to Charles Leclerc. So the finishing order at the end was Hamilton first, from Verstappen in second, Raikkonen stopping the Red Bulls from getting a double podium, taking third, and he just looked like he didn't give a damn on the podium, still wearing his shades, typical Raikkonen. Ricciardo fourth, he had a bit of trouble with his front wing. He got some debris lodged in it, so it was causing him problems, why he got caught by Raikkonen so quickly. Vettel a bit of a lonely fifth place. He had pitted obviously after Bottas did due to his tyres going off, and he was a good too far back and too far ahead of anyone else for it to cause problems. Magnussen taking sixth, decent race for the Dane, quiet throughout, but a good result for the Haas driver in sixth place. He was able to hold off Valtteri Bottas at the end, but the virtual safety car again did help him a little bit in that, or the Finn might have got past with a couple of extra laps at full pace. Sainz came home and took 8th, as I just mentioned there. He was suffering from a loss of power towards the end. Hulkenberg 9th, decent race from the German. He started obviously outside the top 10, started on the soft tyres, so he went really long into the race, able to take home 9th. And Charles Leclerc once again in that Sauber 10th place. There's been rumours this week that Ferrari are going to put him in the seat instead of Kimi Raikkonen for next year. I've been saying it since the start of the season. This boy's a multi-time world champion in the making. Get him in that seat and watch him go, because he is just unbelievable. He's just outperforming that car. Sauber are doing really well and developing it further as well. So brilliant result for him again. So a top 10 in qualifying and a top 10 in a race. So fantastic stuff from him. Grosjean 1 place away from the point. The Frenchman just cannot buy a point this season. He's not made the points since Japan last year. So we're going back to the last, 4 or 5 races of last year, and all the races so far this year. He's not made the points, so it's not looking good for him. He's bound to be getting frustrated. Stoffel van Dorn came home in 12th. Marcus Ericsson was 13th. Brendan Hartley came home in 14th. Sergei Sirotkin in 15th. Fernando Alonso was classified as the last runner in 16th, but he didn't complete the last lap after an issue with his tyre where basically his left rear was falling off. Looks like possible suspension failure, I'm too sure at this point. Obviously Stroll had these tyre failures, as I mentioned, Perez with the engine issue, and Ocon and Gasly had that first lap crash which put both of them out. I did notice that the Driver of the Day award, but the actual Driver of the Day award from F1 that the fans vote for on Twitter, was actually given to Sebastian Vettel. Now Vettel did have a good race in terms of coming back through the field to take 5th, but I would give the driver of the race personally to Hamilton, who was flawless in managing that car, managing the gap to Verstappen as the race went on. Seb had a good race, but I mark him down just purely because of that first lap incident, or it would possibly been a tie between the two. I do also give Leclerc again props for another top 10 in that car, Magnussen for a good race as well. We can't take away from Verstappen. Solid race from the Dutchman, and that's obviously going to give him a bit further confidence considering he'd had a number of crashes obviously earlier on this year. Now what does that do for the Drivers' Championship? Well, it now means that Hamilton is back on top of the Drivers' Championship on 145 points. So he's 14 points clear of Sebastian Vettel, who's in second. Daniel Ricciardo is still in third on 96. He's 4 points clear now of Valtteri Bottas. Kimi Raikkonen is in 5th place on 83, and Verstappen is in 6th on 68 points. In the Teams' Championship, Mercedes are still clear on 237 from Ferrari on 214, so Ferrari gaining a little bit of ground with coming 3rd and 5th over 1st and 7th for Mercedes, so that's gained them a couple of points on the World Champions. Red Bull are still in 3rd on 164 points. There seems to be a bit of a gap between them and the top two, and then there's over 100 points between them and 4th place, best of the rest, which is still Renault on 62 and McLaren on 40. So that is it for the French Grand Prix. First time back, as I say, in 10 years, and the return to the birth of Grand Prix racing, as I mentioned at the start. This is also the first of 3 weekends in a row, and if I've done it right, I think this is the first weekend of 5 races in about 6 or 7 weeks before the summer break. So it's a great time for F1 fans. Next week it's the Red Bull Ring, Red Bull at home, their home track at in Austria, the old A1 ring. It's a very short track, very quick track with a number of really tight corners, especially turn 2, you're going up the hill, so there could be a lot of action there. It'll be fast and frantic 70 plus laps round the Red Bull Ring next week. So that's next Sunday. I will be back for that with another race review, but for now that is it for today. Comment below, what did you think of today's race? What did you think of the Paul Ricard circuit? Was it a good race? Is it going to be good moving forward? Should there be any changes to the layout for next year? Let us know below in the comments. I'll reply to them as much as I can do. And hit the like button if you've enjoyed this review as well. And don't forget to subscribe by hitting the subscribe button and the bell icon as well. But as always, my name is Andy. Thank you very much for watching, and until the next video, I'll see you again soon. Ta-ra.